Greetings everybody, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm near a watercourse called Greendale Gill, which is just over there. You can probably hear it. And that's next door to a fell called Middle Fell, which is very near to Wastwater in the Lake District National Park. Now Middle Fell is a Wainwright, and with not particularly great weather forecast, I thought, you know what, I'm here, I'll go and try and do a Wainwright, albeit a relatively low one. But it's a challenge, isn't it? Especially for somebody as unfit as me. But partway up the fell, I've come across a section of the water. You can hear it in the background rushing away. And this section of water, I think, demonstrates the power of portrait as opposed to landscape framing. Where's my viewing aid? So let me just highlight that for a second. So by landscape framing, I'm meaning that way around. So your longest edges are top and bottom, and portrait is t'other way round. So let's take a look at this falls, and I'll try and describe to you what it is that I'm doing and why the difference in framing actually has an impact on the final image. Okay, so there's my falls. Loads and loads of fantastic water movements, lots of noise. So I can obviously hear in my head, the sound of that water moving. I can see it clearly with my eyes, and I can also see very clearly that it's moving quite quickly. There's quite a volume of water going on in there. So it's those kinds of notions and ideas that I've got rolling around in my head that I want to try and encapsulate in my final image. Right, so you can see the camera mounted on the tripod, nice and secure. Just switch it on. Let me artificially brighten the image so that you can see it a bit more clearly. I can't get the camera much closer, unfortunately, because A, there's a lot of glare, and B, every time I do, it says focusing has failed. So excuse the fact that this actual LCD is a little bit small. Let's get rid of all this other info. There we go, like that. So here we're in landscape format. Now you would say probably that the subject suits the landscape format, because I've got the water, my story, if you like, starts here in the top corner, and then it's flowing down through the frame and then out of this bottom corner. That has a disadvantage in that these two corners here are a little bit empty. And now what's saving me a little bit is there is actually another watercourse here. There's a small falls that's next door to my thumb as well. So, I could play around a bit with the composition, maybe just concentrate on that to fill it with water movement. Yeah, that probably works. I'm just sort of doing this very quickly so that you can see it. I have a polarizer on the front, so if we just watch the glare on the rocks here in the foreground, it's more effective down here. We just do it full circle. So you can see on this rock here, it's quite shimmery. And if you watch that rock, as I turn the polarizer, the shimmer disappears. So the rock looks more contrasty. That's cool. I've still got a little bit of sheen on some of these rocks, and that's fine. Let me just go back to the full display. Camera is still level. Focus point, I normally focus about a third into my scene, So I think a third into my scene is sort of on this rock here. So let's change the focus point to there, and we'll manually focus on the tip of that rock. There we go. Focused. Right, let's check exposure. So I've artificially brightened the image so that you can see it, and I've got a very, very tall bar here on the far right hand side of the histogram. So let's pull it back, maybe pull it back one more, and I'm doing that out of experience because I know that these white water movements here, they will appear quite bright in the frame. I'm on a 2-second timer. Take the image, wait for it to finish writing to the SD card, and I always review the image, take a look at what it looks like. Yeah, that looks okay. What about the histogram? Histogram looks good. If I go to the full-sized image, you can see just there, just above my finger, I've got a tiny, tiny blinky. So that image to me, it's quite, I don't know, it doesn't encapsulate the energy and the noise in the same way as I can actually hear for real. So let me try and demonstrate that by changing the orientation of the camera. So now we have the camera in portrait. Let's just brighten the image so that you can see it clearly. And let's do the same compositional exercise. Let's get rid of all this gump. Right. I think we need to come out a little bit. What have we got? Sorry, I'm not talking as I'm doing this. There we go. I think that's probably my composition. What I was trying to do was minimize the impact of having these two corners relatively empty. I think the story in the falls is good enough. Now what the portrait framing is doing is it's now introducing a zigzag line that wasn't in the original image. So you're being taken down here, down here, down here, and effectively out here. Now a zigzag line is quite a powerful line to have in your image. What I'm looking at is actually quite powerful in terms of noise and movement. So the portrait framing has actually allowed me to introduce that notion of power. Now I'm going to do the same exercise with the polarizer because clearly I've moved the camera. If you just watch this rock here in front of my thumb. There we go, the glare off that rock has gone. Same exercise with the focus point. There we go. So about 1/3 in. No, I probably had it about right actually. 1/3 in, manually focus. Like so. My aperture is f8. Exposure's about 1/4 of a second, that's fine. So I'll do the same thing with exposure. I'm watching the histogram and you can see, it's now at the top of the histogram, but you can see that, you know, huge long line there. So let's bring the exposure down. Yeah, -1/3 is probably about right. Camera is level, 2-second timer. Wait for it to finish writing to the card and review. Let's look at the info. Yeah, histogram looks fine. Look at the full-size image. And again, just got a tiny blinky just there in front of my finger. There's another one down here as well, but I'm pretty sure that in software I'll be able to sort that out. So let's just review the images. Right, so let's do a quick in-field review while we're here. That was my first image, which was portrait. I'm being taken on a journey down through the image from right to left. There's plenty of movement, plenty of rocks, plenty of color, plenty going on. Yeah, I've got 2 empty corners, but I'm hoping that the story is strong enough to divert the viewer's attention away from these corners. But the atmosphere, the mood, the movement in this image, it doesn't quite appear as strong as what I can hear in my ears. The portrait interpretation is more powerful, more energetic. Now, to some extent, the portrait framing suits the subject in that the subject itself is long and thin. But the impact of portrait is to introduce this zigzag notion into the final image, which now translates to that power, that noise, that movement, far more so than where we originally started with, which is the portrait orientation. So that's a quick whistle-stop explanation of portrait versus landscape. And it's something that I actively explore when I'm out in the landscape. The landscape format generally tends to be quieter, more suited to soothing, calming landscape images. Whereas portrait, by its very nature, tends to be more energetic, tends to be more demanding of the viewer's attention. So every scene, or almost every scene that I'm trying to photograph, I'll always try both just to see what impact it has on the final image. Now, the only time I don't do that is if I am feeling calm and peaceful and quiet, in which case it will always be the landscape format that I will go for. But for something like this, which is energetic and noisy, then the portrait framing will always be my first choice. It's also worth noting that on social media, so things like Instagram, the portrait format lends itself to the orientation of the device, because we tend to hold our phones more like that than like that. So that's something else to bear in mind as well, if social media is your primary platform for showing off and highlighting your work and your images. So that's it for this one. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope it's been useful. Please like, comment and subscribe. And until I'm out again in the landscape, take care, stay well and stay safe. I shall see you on the next one. Take care. Bye for now.